All right, let's get through the fundamentals of instruction, going straight from this practical PTS book here. A good source of where we need to stay focused on in our studies. So, task A is dealing with human behavior and communication. So that's what we're going to focus on today. We are going to try to go through as many of these tasks as we can. I'm just going to go through like studying, uh, normally study for them. Some other helpful guides is this practical guide to the CFI check ride. This helped a lot on it. Um, that has helped a lot with studying. So we're going to go through task A straight in order of PTS. And again, just trying to hit through all those acronyms with it today. So with task A are human behaviors, definitions of human behavior. So our definition of human behavior is the study of how and why humans behave the way that they do. Um, it determines the personality types of the students, whether they're rational, an artisan, guardian, it, that kind of extrinsic or intrinsic um, type of personality comes from the human behaviors and the environment that they've grown up in and their personal experiences there. So on to from human behavior, trying to satisfy needs. And from this, we got this from Maslow himself. Maslow came up with the basic hierarchy of these needs and created a pyramid for us. So at the bottom of the pyramid was the physical needs. And this is the most basic need. This is the need that must be met first before learning can happen. So, for physical needs, this is the need for water, the need for food. If the student comes in hungry or thirsty, then that's really what they're going to be focusing on. So, that has to be met first. And then moving on to shelter. Okay, they had a place to sleep and they have a good rest coming in. We have to check that and to see if our student has these physical needs met. Okay, if they're hungry, we might keep snacks in our little cubbies for them. If they're thirsty, water fountains or just water bottles to give them is a good remedy of it. Sleep is one that we can't really ignore. So if they're really sleep deprived, if they went out last night and partied or had an all night Call of Duty fest, then we really can't do anything about that except for stopping the training right then and there and have them go home and get some rest. So next on Maslow's hierarchy of needs is the safety. So for learning to happen, Maslow said that the student needs to fill these safety needs. So they need to feel safe with the person that is instructing them, they know that they're not going to be risk takers in the airplane and take unnecessary risks, but also of the environment of where the training's taking place. Is this taking place at an airport? Is it taking place off the airport in a classroom somewhere? If if it's at someone's house, how do they feel safe being in those environments there? So they need to feel that level of safety for them to go with their learning experience. So next is the social aspect of it. So going up again, these are building blocks building off of each other. So once the bottom need is filled, then we can move on to the next need. So the third need of Maslow's hierarchy is the social need. So this is the social need of the feeling of being of belonging. Student needs to feel like they belong to be with you in their presence, instructing them instructing. So as flight instructors, we need to do everything in our capacity to make students feel like they belong, that they feel welcomed. We don't talk bad about them when they're not there because rumors can spread. You never know where those words might end up, and it might end up in the student's ears later down the road. So we want every student that sits in front of us to feel welcome and feel like they belong. So the social aspect and the social need is met. So next up this is esteem, which is our self-esteem and the esteem from others. So this kind of leaks into the social need aspect of it, in the sense that they know that they belong. They know that their instructor's not talking bad about them or talking about how bad their landings were or how bad their stalls were, and the fear of that. So they need respect. So if we give out respect as instructors, then we can expect respect in return. So esteem is a big component for respect. There, they have to respect others and they have to respect themselves. If they can't believe that they will be able to fly the airplane, then they're going to be right. Okay, whether they believe that they can or believe that they can't, they will be correct. They'll be right. So it's us as flight instructors to help build up that self-esteem to a healthy level and prove to them that they can do this, that they can fly the airplane. Once we hit that, then we can satisfy this self-esteem need. And the last need of Maslow is where we want our students to go. And this comes from that self-fulfillment need, the feeling that they were born to do this. Getting them past those learning plateaus and really tough times and getting them to the point that they can do this, they know what to do, and they have that self-fulfilling prophecy that they have accomplished their goals to become professional pilots or private pilots or whatever they're trying to get. So this self-fulfillment need is at the very top of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And this cannot be accomplished without the bottom needs building off of each other. All right. So with this, with these needs being met and normal flight instruction happens, students will have to get critiques. Us as flight instructors will have to give critiques and talk to the students about positive traits, negative traits of their flying. And what that can lead to is students not in a scenario that they're used to where they kind of feel anxious of getting negative critiques. They only want to see the positives. They only want to know about the positives. So when we talk about negatives, they can throw out some defenses to help try to save their face and save their own self-esteem, self-respect. And these are natural occurring defense mechanisms. So defense mechanisms. These are subconscious in nature, subconscious defense mechanisms that students can subconsciously come up with and trying to make excuses and trying to put them in good graces with the instructor. It's not really a battle going on here, but in their own minds, they think it's a battle. It's the fight or flight mentality of these students. So we have a couple of defense mechanisms and a good acronym to help with these defense mechanisms is doctor, doctor, and fast CPR. So doctor, doctor, fast CPR is a way of memorizing these defense mechanisms for our students. So the first one up there is denial. Student will flat out deny that a negative outcome happened. So if we are on the taxiway, and we notice that the student is not keeping on the center line in taxiing, and they kind of start drifting off to the right, and there's another plane right there parked, and they get super close of actually clipping that that airplane. In that sense, that student might deny that that ever happened. No, I was nowhere near that other airplane. Okay, I was on that center line the entire time. So just flat out denying what happened in reality as ever happening, because it is brings them too much anxiety of it actually being there. So flat out denial is our first defense mechanism. Next one is repression. So repression, very similar to denial, but it goes a little bit even further in the sense that with repression, the student has a strong negative feeling towards what happened. Say that same scenario about the student in the taxiway moving over close to the right and almost clipping the wing off of another plane. Okay. They saw it and they denied it ever happened, denied that it was actually close at all of having a runway incursion. And then we talk about it. They go home. We come back. Very next day, I mentioned, hey, Susie or John, okay, I want to talk to you again about yesterday on that runway incursion that we almost had, and they have no memory of it whatsoever. This is classic definition of repression. They repress those memories down so deep into their subconscious minds that it is hard for them to even bring them back out. Sometimes they get buried and they come up again and they're able to remember parts of what happened, but not all. And then sometimes it happens to where they have no recollection of it ever happening. So perfectly normal type of reaction, something to watch out for. Next D is displacement. So with displacement here, displacement is the go home and kick the dog type of defense mechanism. They are displacing their dissatisfaction or their anger onto someone else. They're viewing us as flight instructors as their teachers, as their mentors in this, and they don't want to take out their anger on us. They feel like whatever critique I gave them, they felt that that was harmful to their reputation in some way, and they kind of bottle that. They'll shake their head, yes. They'll go home and of their girlfriend, spouse, whatever, um, they'll just kind of explode on them. So they'll displace their anger onto someone or something else. So they want to save face. They don't want to get negative marks from us. They don't want us to know that they're actually angry here, but they displace their anger onto someone else. Okay, next R here is rationalization. So with rationalization is the excuses defense mechanism. So they will come up with any sort of rational thought, rational explanation of why they did the thing that they did. And it could be positive, it could be negative. Mostly, it's going to be negative here. But they just try to rationalize their thought process of why they pulled up when trying to break through a stall. And hear that stall warning horn? They feel low to the ground. They pull up instead of pushing forward. Okay, just a quick example on that. So it doesn't really matter how they try to rationalize that action, that they have to realize that that action is still the wrong action to take. And so no point of rationalization will get them to try to convince us or the airplane that, okay, that is the right action to do. So next is fantasy. So this is the daydream one. This you might have a student that is staring right at you, glassy-eyed. You're telling them kind of some negative things that they probably don't want to hear. That, and then they just take a mental checkout. So they check out mentally, and they don't fully comprehend. They just kind of that selective hearing comes into play, and they won't actually comprehend what you're saying from that point on. So the glassy-eyed look, they might be completely in la la land, but you have to recognize that that glassy look, they're not comprehending what you're saying, what your critique is, and help try to bring them back to reality. Next is compensation. So this is compensating a positive trait with a negative trait, positive action with a negative action. So if the student went out and really had trouble with slow flight or steep turns, we did it a few times. They weren't getting it. It just wasn't their day. So we go off and do something else. And like ground reference maneuvers, they nail their ground reference maneuvers, and then we come back and land and debrief. And in that debrief, I go ahead and tell them, "Hey, your ground reference maneuvers were great, but let's go ahead and talk about those steep turns." And the student's like, no, well, hold on. I still want you to talk about those ground reference maneuvers. Those are really what I nailed. That's what I want to hear. I don't want to hear about steep turns. Okay. I want to hear about how good my ground reference maneuvers were. That's a classic example of compensation, trying to compensate those positive actions with negative actions, or negative actions with positive actions. There. Okay, our P is projection. So with projection very similar to our displacement in the sense that the student is not taking ownership of the mistake, and they that project onto someone else for their own shortcomings. So this is like with teachers. Um, the student might say that the teacher I failed that test because the teacher did not give me a test review. Classic example of projection there. Okay, it's not their fault that they failed. It's the teacher's fault because they didn't give them a test review. Okay, and our last one on here is our reaction formation. All right, so reaction formation. So with reaction formation, let's see here. It's the belief in the opposite of, they say what is opposite of what they truly believe in. That mentality that I don't care what other people think about me, but in deep down, they do. They actually do believe the exact opposite of what they are saying. But they try to save face because of their anxiety of the truth getting out might be too much for them. So they'll say the opposite when deep down they believe in the opposite. So, airplane example is a student saying that every landing I have is a bad landing. I don't care about my bad landings as long as I have as long as I safely land and no one broke a bone or the airplane's not broken, and it's a good landing in my book. Okay, well, deep down you know that they want to come in and hit on hit a butter smooth landing and grease that landing for the first time. They know that that's what they truly want. All right, so that is our defense mechanisms there. And let's move on to student emotional reactions. So, student emotional reactions with this. All right, so couple of normal reactions that we can expect students to have in flying smaller airplanes that we are using for our trainers is anxiety, and stress. So those two are our main stresses of this anxiety and stress. So with anxiety, anxiety, the definition of anxiety is feeling of worrisome, um, unnerving feeling, fear of the unknown. While stress, a couple of different stresses that we'll break down here. But normal stress is kind of that sweating, fast heart rate, beating of the chest, kind of the warming of our body, um, and being very quick actions. So flying airplanes is a stressful environment. We it's a loud environment. We have to be paying attention to not just what's happening inside the airplane, but what the airplane is doing. Where is the airplane orientation, but also what is happening outside of the airplane. So it's a lot of the things to stress about and look around, and it's just a stressful environment for any person there. So, with stress, we have two types of stress that we will look at. Uh, we have the normal stress and abnormal stress. Normal and abnormal stress. All right. So, with normal stress, what we can expect the students to do is if we, very first time we fly with them, um, well, after a few times, actually, let's change the scenario. Let's make it to where we're about 3 or 4 lessons in. We want to show them the proper procedure for an engine out procedure. What we're testing them on is their um, readiness for the scenario, their muscle memory over the steps, the required uh, memorization type steps for an engine out, what we should be seeing once we pull that throttle, what they should be doing and looking for. But also what we're testing the student is how they handle stress. The student, of course, kind of knows it's happening, but in the middle, as long as we have a good field or safety field available for us to land in, we'll pull the throttle without too much warning to the student. And now it's on to the student to see how they perform under stress. Engine is out. We've pulled the throttle back. Under a normal stressful reaction, what we can expect the student to do is go through that muscle memory. Okay, they still react appropriately under stress up to their experience level. So if they were taught kind of the flow of down at the bottom and kind of a reverse L, um, down, mix, gas on both. Okay, mixture full. Okay, carb heats in, and then ignition. They've gone through the flow. Then we know that they handle well under stress. And then even happier if we see them get out a checklist if they have enough altitude. So under stress, we can expect those students to handle it appropriately with the available information that we have for them. So with this being, let me think here. Yeah. So they handle it under the experience that they've had so far. So their training has prepared them up to that point. So as long as they can handle it and work appropriately with the controls, they're still fluid with the controls, then they'll handle it under normal stress. Okay, some abnormal reactions to stress. These are the ones that we have to look for as CFIs. So, abnormal reactions to stress is anger. Okay, their mood changes very rapidly. So, or any sort of mood swing, but very anger. The true anger is a big one. Okay, getting angry with us. Why'd you do that? Why'd you pull that throttle? Okay, even though I told them we prepared for it, um, big mood swings, being happy 1 second and very quiet, very focused in the other. That being said, they can be a little too focused. So overcompensate or over cooperation. So they're trying to control that airplane. And as you're talking them through the scenario, maybe telling them to turn and stuff, and right before you're even telling them to turn, they are very quickly um, jerking the airplane to the right or to the left of what you're trying to tell them. So over cooperation of the airplane, um, they're trying to do what you're telling them to in an instant instead of letting the airplane fly and letting the airplane catch up to the controls. Next one is let's see here. Painstaking self-control. So painstaking self-control, this can be looking at their hands and seeing that those white knuckles of them just gripping, squeezing that yoke with all their might. Taking a look at that and seeing that that is some painstaking self-control there. So letting them um, calm down, chill out, put the throttle back in, and stop that maneuver. And the last one on here is from laughing or singing. So, in an engine out scenario, it's probably not the most appropriate time to start laughing or singing. So, if that happens, that is an abnormal reaction to stress that we could see in our students. If we see any of these signs or symptoms from our students, we need to end the flight immediately. We'll go in and land. We'll debrief and everything. And couple of ways of going about it is we might have another CFI take them up, check them out, and seeing if they also observe one of these abnormal stress signs and symptoms on there. And if they do, we can also get the chief pilot involved there, and also an AME also involved. If it is very severe accounts of one of these, then we might have to get the AME medical examiner, aviation medical examiner, involved with this student to have them checked out once again before flying with them again. Okay, so that is our student emotional reactions. We'll go ahead and flip to, let's see here. Okay, we'll go to elements of communication. All right, so elements of communication. Here, some basic elements of communication involves us as an instructor. We are the keeper of the knowledge. We are the holder of the knowledge. We got to this point by a lot of studying and going through the motions, okay, memorization, understanding, and application. So for us, we are the source keeper of the information. And our jobs as CFIs is to give our students bits of that information at a time to where they become their own masters of their knowledge, in masters of um, their aviation field. So it starts with the source. How we present that knowledge comes through symbols. Symbols can be words on a board, words on paper, or the spoken word. Any way of using language to present our information. It doesn't have to be necessarily words, it can be pictures. Anything can become a symbol if there is a meaning and purpose behind it. And our students become the receiver. So they are the receivers of this knowledge, this information. So we have the source, symbols, and receivers here. So that's it. This is the very basic form of communication. Someone talks, uh, someone is listening. The problem with it is with aviation. Aviation is a very technical subject. And sometimes our words, our language that we use to try to um, move that information along, creates a barrier in between the symbols and our students, our receivers. So this leads us into barriers of communication. We, of course, would love that any sort of analogy that we make, any metaphors that we mean, every time we mention like AME, FAA, all those acronyms of the aviation field, we would love it if we knew that each student sitting in front of us knows exactly what those acronyms mean and what those metaphors mean, what the analogies mean, but sometimes they don't. You have to recognize it. And we come up with these barriers of communication, the breakdown of communication between us as flight instructors and our students. So acronym help with this is COIL. COIL is our acronym for this. And first one is C for confusion of the symbols. Okay. If I'm trying to write on the board and I don't have good handwriting or I talk really fast, there might be some confusion of the symbol. So what I'm saying or what I'm writing to what is actually understood leads us to one of our barriers to communication there. If we talk about stalls, but I never mention any difference between an aerodynamic stall and a car stall. The student who might be driving a manual transmission, might think that stalls, up to the point that we actually do them, means that the engine completely stops. And if we don't clarify on that, then that creates that confusion of symbols of what we meant to illustrate there. Next one is our overuse abstractions. So overuse of abstractions here. So abstractions just mean very broad terms. Very broad terms. Oh, today we're going to go fly an aircraft. Well, there's many different types of aircraft. There's gliders, there's airplanes, okay, there's airships, there's helicopters. What type of aircraft are we flying today? So overuse of abstractions, using the terms aircraft instead of specifics like Cessna 172 is an example of overuse of abstractions. Okay. When appropriate, use specifics. Don't use generic broad terms. Next one is interference. So interference is the next term here. And this can be a physical interference in the terms of um, the loud environment. Airplanes are extremely loud, and maybe the student does not have the best headphones that have the noise canceling operations to them. So, trying to talk to them and trying to explain in the aircraft might not be the best classroom environment for that student. Okay, the noise level is might be too distracting and causing that interference between our communication. So loud distractions causes those interference. They can have physical interferences as well. They could be partially deaf um, in one ear, but not the other. Those can cause those physical interferences as well. Good to know and realize for a flight instructor. And the last one on here, which is the biggest one, which is our lack of common experience. And put a little star by that, because that is the biggest one. That is the biggest cause of our lack of common experience. Okay, lack of common experience um, just comes in, and you have to realize that as flight instruction, um, we were sitting in their shoes 1 or 2 years ago, okay, or however long it's been since you were a private pilot or student pilot. You have to realize that you've come a long way. You studied a lot of books. You went to a lot of class. You've passed a lot of check rides to get to this point. Your knowledge is powerful of you moving forward, but you have to remember where you come from. So you got to realize that at the very beginning, you knew none of the same material that you know now. So, this lack of common knowledge is that breakdown of going too fast and going straight to complex instead of simplifying down and going from simple to complex. So, lack of common experience, biggest barrier to communication there. All right. And on the last part of our PTS on task A is that, let me think here. Um, Development of communication skills. So, development of communication skills. So, with this, um, what we can do as flight instructors to improve our communication skills. All right, so let's do this. Our acronym is for liquor. Pick this up. Come on. There we go. Okay, So for our communication skills and our improvement of it comes from the acronym LICR. So to improve our communication skills, we have to work on our listening. We have to work on listening, and you have to understand that to be a good listener, you have to first want to listen, want to hear what the students have to say, their feedback, their questions, so that you can give them the best response from your ability. So, fully looking at the student, fully engaged in listening, not writing in our logbooks the second we get back to our desk for debriefs. Okay, we are solely focused on them. So we look them in the eyes. We use all the tricks in the book just to stay focused on them. So working on our listening skills can help improve our general communication skills as well. Next one is instructor communications. So break this as instructor comms. So instructor communications. Uh, as becoming a CFI, we're going to have students, and with our students, we're going to get new experiences. We've had some of our old experiences, what happened with our instructors, okay, and we can use those as tools for our students. Okay, use our stories, use our set up a dramatic scenario that you remember that your flight instructor told you, and you always remembered it because it was very intriguing. Using these communications and using these stories to help drive a point home can help with those communication skills. So save those stories, save those scenarios because they'll come in handy. They'll come in handy one day. All right, next is questioning. To improve our communication skills, we have to be good listeners. You have to be good listeners for this. Um, oh, geez. Good question. Set up good questions. I mean, so what makes good questions is those open-ended questions. It's really easy to set up and be like, okay, well, should you do this um, at this point? Okay, that's a yes or no answer. So yes or no type questions. Oh man, those yes or no type questions. They're fine if if done appropriately. The no, true or false, is also an issue as well. All right. So start again with the questioning there. So we want to try to ask as many open-ended questions to our students as possible. These open-ended questions um, is how, explain why, um, to really dive in deep into the student's understanding. So to really test to see if your student actually gets it, ask these open-ended questions, and you'll soon realize that good questions like this are actually quite difficult to come up with. I mean, you see any sort of those game shows. Um, they have tons of writers that write those questions, and a ton of them don't even get to the game show because they get tossed out because they're too easy, the true or false, um, and doesn't give enough rigor to it. So being good at coming up with good questions. Questions are a dime a dozen, but really good ones. Uh, Maybe want to write those down, save them into your lesson plans to use appropriately. All right. So next one is instructional enhancement. All right. So instructional enhancement being in the sense that a good instructor is always learning. Good teacher is always learning, just along with the students. So, um, as flight instructors, we want to try to provide answers to all students' questions. The only way that we're going to do that is by having um, a very solid foundation to our knowledge of aviation in general. So technical, and you can dive really deep into like aerodynamics. You can really dive deep into airplane systems and stuff. There's always an avenue um, to learn more as a flight instructor. So we should we should take the initiative as flight instructors to enhance our instruction. Okay, and our last one on developing communication skills on here as R is role play. So we should role play with our students as blind instructors. If a student is having a hard time with, say, radio calls, we can role play as air traffic control and uh, give them some sample radio calls. We don't even have to leave our little cubicle. We can just stay at our desk and um, role play these radio calls back and forth to each other. Okay, cheer fly, um, act as the DPE agent as we go through. So role playing could play a key role into developing those communication skills. Acting as someone else kind of brings you out of your comfort zone and to reacting like someone else. So that will wrap up task A. Kind of got that one down uh, pretty well. Um, all right. All right, let's go to task B. Let's see. Okay, so learning process here. So this probably will start off with what is the definition of learning? Learning is a change in behavior as a result to an experience. So learning is a change of behavior as a result to change in or result in experience. Here. Oh, right. All right, so let's get through some of these learning theories. First off is behaviorism. That's the carrot and stick. So reward and punishment aspect of it, the carrot and stick. So, for example, would be landing competition. Okay, so some sort of landing competition between you and your student. Um, okay, they're getting close to their check ride, and you can set up just a little landing competition at a local airport. Be like, all right, well, I bet that I can land, hit that spot, and stop sooner than you can. Okay, and loser buys lunch. So we have, with that, we have the carrot, which is the competition aspect of it, of trying to beat and show up the instructor, which is going to be you. And then you also have the stick, which is for lunch, buying lunch and stuff. And it'll be up to you if you go through with it of actually buying their lunch, or they're buying your lunch aspect of it. But in the moment and stuff, you can use this behaviorism type learning strategy to kind of get into that healthy competition aspect of it. So next is cognitive. So cognitive is an approach to psychology that attempts to explain human behavior by understanding your thought process. So that's the building blocks example to learning. So we start at simple and we go to complex. At higher order. So HOTS, which is your higher order thinking skills. All right, higher order thinking skills. There. Okay, so just thought of an example with this is to fly over as you're coming in with your student. You're flying in. You see that you're on kind of the wrong end of the runway to get onto downwind. And as we're flying and as we're kind of in that stressful environment, you can ask the student, okay, go ahead and fly over the airport. If this was an uncontrolled field, go ahead and fly over the airfield and give me 3 ways to get on to downwind, or 2 ways, or one, or a couple of ways. How do you get on downwind? And walk me through your process. Okay, so questioning, going to that higher order thinking skills. Okay, breaking the flow, breaking the monotony of just going and connecting with downwind like they always have. So break up the routine sometimes, give them some cognitive questions, some higher order thinking type questions, and you'll be good to go. So in the book, we also have information processing theory, which means that humans like to learn like computers. So they gather information, process information, store and receive information, and form responses to this. I'm not sure if that's going to be covered in the PTS or not, but it's there. And constructivism. It is humans construct a unique mental image by using past experiences. So that's a mistake. That's where this higher order thinking skills came from. Okay, so my mistake there. So constructivism is the higher order thinking skills one. Humans construct a unique mental image by using past experience, problem-solving tools, etc., to new material. Typically produces higher order thinking skills. There. Okay. And let's go ahead and rank the last one on there, which is your information processing theory. So humans are like computers. They gather information, process information, store and receive information, and form responses to this. Yeah, I don't have much on that, other than humans learn like computers. So process, store, receive information. So acting like our brain is a computer. Memory storage. Uh, so memory storage aspect of learning theory. So we have behaviorism, which is the carrot and stick, which is our landing competition. Cognitive, which is the building blocks. Constructivism, which is your higher order thinking skills. Information processing is treating our brain like a memory storage device to where we can recall information when necessary. So we got, I guess, BCCI, learning theory, BCCI. Behaviorism, cognitive, construction, information process. All right. Now, in the chapter, this one also talks about Bloom's taxonomy, the 6 learning classifications. Does not necessarily mention that in the PTS, but should be good to know. The knowledge, comprehension, application, synthesis, analysis, and evaluation. So, learning is achieved through these 6 levels. We, of course, want to go from the knowledge to the synthesis level of it. It's another triangle, since we love our triangles in this learning space. All right, so I think that's good to go there. Let's move on to perceptions. All right, so 5 senses. So taking information through the 5 senses there. So 1, the physical organism. Let's see. Actually, I want to, no. Restart on this one. Let's actually have an acronym for it. So for perceptions, we have G-step. Okay, so physical organism. Need your eyes to see, sense the world around you. So, perception, physical organism. The physical organism for perception senses the world around it. Okay, the next one, our perceptions are our goals, values. Things have no interest if they aren't perceived well. Okay, there's little notes on that. So every student has different beliefs and values. So going into it, understanding that you do need to know what your students' goals are. Are they just trying to get their private pilots, their student pilots, or are they trying to go to the airlines? And the steps and rigor that you might be placing on to them, you know that is going to come up and say they're commercial training. So pushing private pilots to hit commercial standards is not unreasonable if we know what their goals are and if they have the ability to do so. Okay, so that makes sense there. So the S are self-concepts. Students can self-actualize from Maslow's can perceive better. Okay. All right, so what I have on this is favorable self-image. Promotes openness. So this is getting them to the very top of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, self-actualize, develop a self-concept, favorable self-image of themselves, positive or negative. Again, they need to believe that they can do it. The effects, the ability to perform or do things favorably or unfavorably. Students with positive self-concept are more receptive to new lessons and experiences, hence the openness. So they know that they're doing well and stuff. They might want to see you demonstrate, I don't know, an accelerated stall or something, or a new maneuver, or a private pilot wants to experience a commercial maneuver and see if they can get it. So openness to it. Let them experience it. Okay, time and opportunity. Okay, so the ability to learn something is dependent on other perceptions. Plan a proper syllabus, length of experience. Okay. So the length of experience impacts learning. So time and opportunity, you'll notice that your first couple of lessons with students will be relatively short in length compared to them getting closer to their check ride, where you might be using your the entire time flying. So length of the experience impacts learning. Know that it might be sensory overload for students getting up there for the first time and just going through basic flight maneuvers like straight and level, climbing turns, descending turns, stuff like that. And then that pretty much is going to be lesson one. And taking that time to check your student and see how they're doing, how they're reacting, They showing signs of stress and, and knowing that time, um, as we progress through time and stuff, they'll get more comfortable in the scenario, become more accustomed to that environment, and they can go through longer sessions. And our last one on perception here is elements of threat. Element of threat. So, if feeling unsafe, fear adversely affects learning. Fear adversely affects learning. Okay, so if we do something stupid in the plane, or we tell them like, "Hey, watch this," and put it into a spin um, on purpose and stuff. We or just simply doing way too much on the first lesson. We try to show them, steep turns or stalls on the very first lesson. They they won't think about anything else. They won't think about what you're talking about. They're just like, okay, when is he going to show me stall? I don't want to do a stall, and that's all that they're thinking in their mind. So if we have that element of threat, fear adversely affects learning. So it's very good at your pre-briefing before you even go out to the airplane. You sit down with them. They know exactly what the flight is going to pertain. They know the maneuvers. They know what I'm going to ask for. What are some clear expectations? What are the goals of today's flight? And that is hopefully eliminating that element of threat, of surprises. Okay, surprises happening and getting into an unsafe environment. All right, so perceptions, the five senses. We use G step to help memorize these. Mm-hmm. So insights are grouping of perceptions into meaningful wholes. Students must keep receptive to new experiences. As perceptions accumulate, the student develops insight by assembling them into larger blocks of learning. Larger blocks of learning. All right, so perceptions, goals, and values, understanding the student's goals, what they want to get out of flight training, their self concept, their self image, being favorable or unfavorable, promotes openness to trying new things. Um, Receptive to new lessons and experiences. Probably should change that to openness to new lessons and experiences. Time and opportunity, length of experience impacts learning. So, the length of our flight um, should be um, very directly related to the number of hours they've spent flying and their general stress level, anxiety level can also affect the time and opportunity. So, opportunity aspect of it, always looking out for little learning experiences. Element of threat, fear, adversity affects learning, and physical organism is to sense the world. Need your eyes to see. Need your eyes to see. this is the individual's ability to sense the world around them. So they need to see it to believe it. All right. Acquiring knowledge. Acquiring knowledge. So I found that the acquiring knowledge and the levels of learning are really close to the same. RUAC. Acquiring knowledge really just does the three. So you got your rote, which is the memorization. Understanding. And application of it. And the last one on there is correlation, which isn't really for acquiring knowledge, but it's for the levels, domains of learning, cognitive domain. So I like to put it in here as it correlates with this correlation. All right, that's real messy, but it's there. All right, so acquiring knowledge, you got RUAC, rote, memorization, understanding, application, correlation. So acquiring knowledge, your first thing, kind of what I'm trying to do on the board with the acronyms is trying to get through this rote memorization, trying to get these acronyms or these little mnemonics down. So stored into rote memorization. Trying to explain it here on the board will help go through this understanding realm. Even if no one's necessarily watching this, still getting on a board like this and explaining it helps transfer this from just rote memorization to that understanding, and also kind of ties in that application aspect of it. So for me, application of it is check right day. So getting there. That's going to be applying everything that we're learning for these fundamentals of instruction into place. Correlating them is after we get the CFI certificate, actually correlating these some fundamentals of instruction into our own students. So for me, going through these stages of acquiring knowledge. All right, let's go through laws of learning. So another acronym, remember Reaper, R-E-E-P-I-R. Reaper. So this stands for readiness. Okay, so student learns best when they are ready to learn. They're there, ready to learn. Okay, exercise. Ready to learn. Okay, exercise. Things most often repeated is best remembered. So repeated, best remembered. Okay, another E is effect, effective learning. So learning is strengthened by a positive experience and weakened by a negative experience. So what effect do you have on people? You always coming into class with a smile on your face, or big frown, mad face and stuff. Students will see that and mirror it. So if you're happy, hopefully that can rub off into them and they are happy. They'll have a positive experience. So, positive experience. Positive experience. Okay, positive experience equals strength and learning. Okay, primacy, law of primacy. Best learned first time. So first learned is first best. First learned equals best learned on there. So that one's a big one. They won't want to see that. So teach it right the first time. You make slips and errors and stuff, which is covered in this as task. Then you need to correct it. But this is also for us trying to be the best instructors that we can, so that we make very little mistakes. We're gonna make mistakes and stuff, but we try to minimize it as much as possible, because we don't want to be reteaching our students bad habits if we were teaching them wrong in the first place. Okay, intensity. Students learn better from the real thing than from a substitute. Okay, so learn how to fly from a real airplane compared to, say, a flight sim. So, real plane versus sim. Okay, sims are great for going through checklists and motions and stuff, but getting the actual feel of the plane, everything, unless it's a very high dollar sim, flight sim, then it's not going to replace the feeling of, say, setting that trim wheel, relieving pressure as the real plane. And the last one is recency. Things most recently learned are best remembered. Last learned, best remembered. Last learned, best remembered. So those kind of go hand in hand. So repeated, best remembered, and last learned is best remembered. So building off of the last lesson is good practice. Skipping around and going off of the first lesson, and then say third lesson, fourth lesson, you try to go back to lesson one to expand on it. Not going to be as fluent as the others. All right. That gets us the laws of learning. So Reaper, their readiness, exercise, effect, primacy, intensity, recency. Readiness, exercise, effect, primacy, intensity, and recency. Oh. All right, domains. Learning. Domains of learning. Cognitive domain. First one, cognitive. Or the thinking domain. So for this one, it brings us back to that RUAC. Help. RUAC. Right. So rote memorization, understanding, thinking domain, application, and correlation. Okay, levels of the cognitive domain. Analysis, synthesis, and evaluation can be acquired through scenario-based learning. Right, so cognitive thinking, we've already kind of done that with RUAC there. So that works. Let's hold that on the side. Affective domain. Couple of things on here. 5 educational objective levels. 5 objective levels. So 1 is awareness. Student is open to learning and training and willing to listen to the instructor. 2 is response. 3 is value. 4 is organizing. And 5 is integration. All right, so not entirely sure if this is going to be brought up in as detail on Check Ride, but knowledge is power. So effective filling domain. Filling domain. So with awareness, a student is open to learning, training, and willing to listen to the instructor. Willingness. Willingness to learn. Willing to listen, willing to learn. Okay, response. Student response by active participation in training. So response. So active learning. Getting them hands-on, mind-on. Okay, value. Student determines value of training and chooses whether to accept it. So student determines value of training and chooses whether to accept it. Okay, they think they're getting their money's worth, not getting their money's worth. Again, using our time wisely, using our lesson plans, keeping us nice and organized with the flow of it. So we're not, we're not talking about the NFL or something, and we're still getting billed. um, for our time. So for organization, student organizes the training within their personal belief system. Personal belief system was. Let's see what else I got on this. Effective. Yeah, I don't even. Oh, that one's it's kind of an unknown. Student organizes the training within their personal belief system on there. Yeah, I'm gonna do a question mark on that one. That one's a little different, weird for me. Integration student internalizes training and incorporates that value into their life. Student internalizes training and incorporates that value into their life. So training the life. Okay. So with this domains of learning, we can remember it as CAP. Cognitive, affective, and our last one, psychomotor. Or the doing domain. This is a skill base and includes physical movement, coordination, and motor skills. There are 4 main instructional levels for aviation training purposes. So 1, the observation. Learner observes or a more experienced person, which would be the instructor, perform the skill. So this is the instructor does, and the student watches. Okay, 2, imitation. The learner attempts to copy the skill. The student does. The instructor observes. 3, practice. Practice level builds proficiency. The learner tries to perform the skill again and again. This is your repetition. This may be done without the presence of the instructor, doing touch and goes after being signed off for solo flight, or heading to the practice area to work on ground reference maneuvers. On board. There we go. And 4 is habit. All right. So for observation, learner does. Learner watches. So instructor does. Student watches. All right. Then imitation, student does. And instructor watches. Okay, practice. Repeated. Repeat it over and over again till learned. And habit, the skill is reached when the student can perform the skill twice the time it takes the instructor or expert to perform the same skill. So, habit. Okay, it says on here the skill is reached when the student can perform the skill in twice the time it takes. I mean, not going to be time in it, but habit. Okay, they can perform it well over and over again. So, I don't know. Okay, repeating correctly time and time again. That's the best explanation, I guess, for it. Okay. Jeez, this task two. Task two has to be so long. Okay, lots of stuff to it. So CAP, cognitive, affective, psychomotor. So cognitive is with thinking, affective is with the feeling and emotion aspect of it, psychomotor dealing with the actual doing and performing the tasks. Okay, in a nutshell, that's 3 domains of learning. Okay, characteristics of learning. We got PEAM. Learning is purposeful. Students learn when they have a clear purpose or goal. Okay, stating the objective. Stating the objective. Okay, experience. Learning is affected. Learning is a result of experience. Students learn through individual experiences. Characteristics of our learning. Okay. All right. All right. All right. Active. Let's finish this one up real quick. Learning is an active process. To learn, students must actively react and respond. Okay, learning is an active process. So, to learn, students must actively react and respond. And learning is multifaceted. Okay, so verbal, conceptual, perceptual, motor skills, emotional, and problem solving. Sometimes this is called the incidental learning. Okay, so a little bit of everything. Types of learning. So learning has to be purposeful. So PEAM. So our characteristics of learning. Learning is purposeful, built on the student's experiences. They have to be an active member in their own learning, uh, and can't be as more active as taking control of an airplane. And it's also multifaceted. So, um, learning from visual cues, they're a visual learner, they're a kinesthetic learner of doing and stuff. All of those domains coming into play. Okay, acquiring skill and acquiring skill knowledge. Stages of skill acquisition. Cognitive stage. Students memorize steps to perform a skill requires all of students' attention. Associative stage and automatic response stage. We got on this. Okay, so we can simplify that to acquiring knowledge. So acquiring knowledge, phases of learning. Okay, Murik. So we acquire knowledge by first memorizing. Okay, then move into understanding. Why'd you put an R on this response stage? No, it's on the wrong thing. Just dang it. Okay. On the wrong thing, that's why. Should put. There we go. Acquiring skill knowledge. Okay, so CAA. So cognitive. Associative. And auto response. So cognitive is memorization of steps, procedures, factual knowledge. Associated step or stage is practice. Student learns to associate individual steps with likely outcomes. Automatic response stage can do the task and multitask, less deliberate attention required. Less deliberate attention required, can do the task and multitask. Okay. So acquiring skill knowledge, first you got to memorize the steps, the flow of the steps. Then we associate with it, we practice those steps until they become a habit or an auto response like our engine out procedures. Okay, we want to get those to automatic response so that if it was to ever happen, then we can try to set us up in the best scenario possible. Try to get that engine restarted as soon as possible, or at least find us a nice field that we can safely land in. Okay. So PEAM there, acquiring knowledge. All right, let's see here. I have on the list of physical skills learning. I don't know if we need that. Okay, let's move on to types of practice. Types of practice. So types of practice. One is deliberate. Two is blocked. And three is random. So deliberate practice, practicing this, specific skills such as steep turns with specific feedback. Blocked, practicing the same skill or same drill until the movement becomes automatic. So doing it over and over again. For an example, basketball foul shot practice improves the function, but not the whole game. Okay, better for short-term performance, but poorer for long-term learning. Okay, ground reference maneuvers, setting block of ground reference maneuvers, but not upper air works. Okay, random, performing a series of separated skills in random order. Okay, keeping them on their toes with that. Evaluation versus critique. Okay, critique, quick feedback, practical suggestions to improve performance, evaluation, overall grade, usually to a standard. Overlearning of knowledge happens when there's continued study of a skill after initial proficiency has been achieved. Student understand weights and balances and now develop an automatic process to do it. Given another airplane type, the student struggles with the fundamental. Okay, that was just an example of it. Okay, so blocked scenario-based training. Evaluation versus critique. Scenario-based training allows students to practice using real examples and develop judgment and aeronautical decision making. That's, of course, what all of our check rides are scheduled as. So, scenario-based training, helping them with check ride practice, but also real life practice as well. Errors. We have slips, mistakes. So slips plans to do one thing and then inadvertently does another. So we tell them on downwind that we should be at, say, 90 knots, and we're steadily at 100. Something like that. So we tell them one thing, but do another. Mistakes is plans to do something wrong and be successful at it. Um, wrong in, say, stall recovery. We say that with stall recovery, we should, you know, um, level pitch all flaps or something. That is a mistake. That is a mistake, and we need to definitely limit our mistakes. Slips happen, mistakes will happen, but trying to catch them and reducing errors is important. So reducing errors is learning and practicing. Kind of example of what we're doing here is just practicing, talking through scenarios, taking time, setting a good pace, checking for errors, actively looking for errors, using reminders, checklists. It's a key on this. Why checklists are on those ACSs and our PTS. Should be using those checklists every time. If we forget something, checklist is going to catch it for us. Using developing routines, pre-flight walk around as an example, and raising awareness, fatigue, lack of recent practice, changes in routing, time pressures associated. Okay, so learning practice, taking time, checking for errors, etc. When an error happens, the student should be able to recover, learning from error. Why did the error happen? Okay, so why did the error happen? So maintaining motivation. Let's see here. Errors. Okay, memory. Memory. SWL. So sensory. Receives initial stimuli and processes it according to how important it is to that person. Okay, working and long term. So working memory stays about 30 seconds. Long term memory, not an exact recall, subject to repression and fading. There. So remembering what has been learned. Theories for forgetting. RIDS, sensory, working, 30 seconds, subject to fading. Information must be coded to long-term memory. Receives initial stimuli and processes it according to how important it is. Important or non-important? Sensory memory. Okay, so we got RIDS. Repression. Defense mechanism, or also how we forget. So repression or suppression, memory pushed out of reach. Student doesn't want to remember the feelings associated with it. Okay, so defense mechanism, interference. Another experience has overshadowed the memory. Okay. Decay. Fading. Use it or lose it there, but not used for extended period of time. Let's see here. S. Suppression, repression, suppression. Okay. So repression is done subconsciously. Suppression is done consciously, like they're doesn't want any feelings about it. Except the suppression is conscious form of forgetting. Okay. Dun, dun, dun. So retention of learning and transfer of learning. Last two, we'll call it. Retention of learning, praises, stimulates remembering. Praises, principles. Praise stimulates remembering. Recall is promoted by association. Information associated with something to be learned aids recall. Okay. Favorable attitudes aid retention. Learning with all senses is most effective. Meaningful repetition aids recall using mnemonics. Okay, so a six on there. So recall, favorable attitudes and aid retention. People learn and remember only what they wish to know. Learning with all senses is most effective. And use all senses for greater understanding and recall. Okay. Last thing on here, transfer learning. We're gonna have to. I'll go back through this, but positive transfer, negative transfer. Okay, so past knowledge supports assist new knowledge, new learning. Learning the rectangular course assists you in learning the traffic pattern. So very uh, correlation there. So positive transfer, correlation versus negative transfer, bad correlation. Driving a car, saying that driving a car is exactly like driving an airplane or taxiing an airplane, which it's not. So confuses, distracts from new learning. Steer a car, you use the steering wheel, and this confuses the student why they can't drive an airplane on the ground like a car. And last is like that habit formation. Usually, aviation requires a building block approach due to its complexity. Developing good study habits and routines helps with the transfer of learning. All right. So I am going to call it. I'm brains fried with this. I'm going to go through these, make sure that I didn't mess up on any of them and everything. But this is kind of what it takes to get through these FOIs. It's just a lot of reading, and you can't necessarily teach it to others, then you don't know it yourself. So, domain or task B is a beast. 13 different little sections to it. It's quite long. So about 2 hour mark, we'll end here and everything. So if you see any mistakes or anything, or have questions about anything, you can put it in the comments down below.